And even though we can do both, I think so often it gets thrown on our plate, whereas in it should look like any other person where, hey, maybe that is too much for one person to hold. And how can we help support her in this role or in this leadership opportunity? And so that's something that I definitely have seen in my season.
Yeah, I think definitely there's probably multiple layers to that affect why any woman in leadership would have to do all of the legwork for stuff, and then also be the one who presents, also be the one who teaches, also be. I think in some of the contexts, this had to do obviously when you're leading in the urban church, and I think this is our audience.
Yeah,
That's right.
We have got to do so many things at times where more things get put on our plate, and I think it also has to do with the fact that we need to care for ourselves enough to place the boundaries of what we're not willing to do.
yeah,
And what we are going to do excellently, right? And so if we don't put those boundaries, then it's only a matter of time before the exhaustion of doing what we don't love to do begins to affect the joy of our lives, right?
right.
So you've heard of that whole 80-15, 5%, 80% of what you do, anybody can do. 15% with a little bit of training, anybody else can do it as well. But then there's 5% that only you can do. And you should give 90% of your energy to that 5%, right? Ideally, we would want to be able to give that. Now, unfortunately, when you're leading in the urban setting, sometimes you have to do like 1,000,001 things. And I've been pastoring for 15 years.
Right.
And that's been the case full on. And every season it's looked a little different on what comes on my plate, what comes off my plate, what comes on my plate. So I completely understand what Vanessa is saying. And there's so much truth to that. I think that it's really definitely about us being willing to put boundaries.
Yeah.
So that what we do and what we bring to the table is flowing out of joy, is flowing out of deep love with God, deep relationship with Jesus. And clearly there will always be the things that we don't love to do. It's called adulting.
Right.
Hey, truth.
I mean, sometimes
Every job has something we don't like.
every job, right?
That's true.
Job.
And so it's trying to make the list of the stuff we don't like to do smaller. But it's going to take us having the courage to say no, because I actually want to be excellent in this, and I want to do this in such a way that it's life-giving to me and to the people that I'm serving. And so it's definitely something we need to take ownership of as women in leadership and say, nope, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I love that because a part of what comes to mind is that I think as a female leader, we tend to take the responsibility because we're like, oh, I can do that better and quicker. And so we immediately were like,
This is true.
which is 100% true. It's how we're wired. And so a part of that boundary is putting like, even though I know I can do that so much better and so much quicker, I just have to release this person. And if they make mistakes, like hope that we can have that conversation and have them grow. And then if anything, especially as a leader, if you have the influence and the ability to move people around, then just have the hard conversation and the reality that that person might not be the best fit for the quote unquote situation that happened that they couldn't get done.
Sure.
Because that's not their strength. And so I think that's huge too. Yeah.
You said something that I think is interesting. You said we do all these things that aren't seen, and then we feel like it's not appreciated. That's very interesting because I think we do that to ourselves, right? Because we do things in the secret, then all of a sudden these men think it just happened, right? I'm like, because they didn't see what we did.
I don't believe in that.
So they don't know. So they don't understand what it took. So they don't understand what it took. I am starting to be very transparent about my processes so that my team, my male team members can understand all it takes to do something so that when I say I can't do that, they understand why.
Okay, so this is
Yes.
good because like
This
I
is
have
so
this
good.
underlying like theory in my heart and in my head about life period where I'm like, if I'm doing something that's requiring a lot of time from me, whether it's for my kids, my spouse, or my church, people are gonna know that I'm doing all these things because all the sacrifice that I'm doing is paving a path for somebody else and it's making somebody else's life easier. And I want to be a blessing and I love to serve and it's, you know, it's a part of how I'm wired. But like in my heart, I'm like, when Jesus died on the cross, he didn't make it a secret, private thing. He did it publicly.
That's so good.
And so his sacrifice made a way for all of us. When I'm sacrificing myself, even for my kids, I'm like, hey, buddy, you're going to get to do this, but this means I can't do this. And it's not a lack of love. It's having them understand that we all have to pay a price when we love.
Right.
And so in some way, shape, or form, when we are willing to communicate that, then when we need somebody in the team to sacrifice for us, then they're like, yeah, man, like you stepped in, now let me step in. But we've got to be willing to communicate. I'm not going to sit here and like beat myself up and be like the martyr.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's a lesson.